morning. I'm what you might call a recovering academic. I began in McGill's Department of Oncology. I worked at the MUHC for many years in palliative care as a psychologist. So I'm not on the hospital wards any longer, but I do remain tied to the same questions that drew me there. Namely, how do we stay human when the world feels like it's unraveling? And how do we respond constructively and perhaps meaningfully in the face of immense suffering? So I'm hoping to build on Marie-Claire's very excellent presentation and some of the ideas maybe that she's put forward. Though I have to admit, next time I want to go before you, because you're a hard act to follow. What I've done today is I've kind of gone back, like I did in COVID, to try to find some kind of role models, some kind of inspirations. I know that was sort of what I had to do as I was sort of facing the isolation and that sort of sense of the world kind of ending. It's going to be story time with Chris today. So sit down, make yourselves comfortable, and I have a couple of different people I've kind of brought with me, and hopefully there'll be an idea or two that will be interesting. I always find sometimes at conferences, if you can walk away with an idea, maybe one idea, that's usually a success. So hopefully there's something in here that would be useful to you. I'm going to go back to ancient times, to antiquity. I'm actually a history major in my early life, and back to the years 14. Yeah, all the way back then. I wasn't there personally. It's a story I heard. Sailors who were crossing the ocean at that time, the Aegean Sea, heard a great cry on the wind. "The great god Pan is dead," the voice said. Now, Pan, in case some of you have forgotten, by the way, this is all going to be on the final exam, right? So take notes here. Pan was a goat-legged god of forests, fertility, spring, the thriving spirit of wild nature. Now, news of his death was met with terrible grief and anguish across the ancient world. Now, why is that? Well, gods aren't supposed to die, right? So it was sort of like the only god who died. And it was the ending of an era. One world was passing, another one was arriving. The end of the pantheon of the Olympian gods, the arrival of monotheism. It was said that Pan's death signaled the dawn of theology. And psychology, by the way, has a similar story. It's been said that psychology, or specifically depth psychology, arose out of the sort of weakening, if you will, of religious authority. That those institutions that had provided sources of meaning and direction were somehow perhaps fading. And so, of course, psychology is going to go through the same thing too at some point. Now, why am I telling this to you? Okay, well, Pan perhaps has returned to us. You know, think of the words that we get from Pan: panic, pandemonium, pandemic. So we're in this sort of seismic shift, and we can all sort of feel it in our outer institutions and in the inner world. So let's talk about the outer world. And I don't think I need to convince anybody here today that the outer world is in rough shape. Any objections? Okay, we're all on the same page. A colleague of mine in Toronto, who works as an analyst, said, "I've never heard so many apocalyptic dreams," in his practice. So there is this sense of this being a kind of low time, perhaps a lonely and impersonal time. So I'm going to offer the excerpt of a poem by the Irish writer W.B. Yeats. He wrote this in 1919 during the influenza virus, which was a global pandemic back then. He wrote this at the time that his wife Georgie was pregnant, and she nearly died of this virus. Pregnant women were the most at risk. There were some areas where 70%, there was a 70% mortality among pregnant women. So his wife survived, and he wrote this poem, and I'm going to read you this excerpt during her convalescence. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Does that feel familiar to you? Okay. So, we've been here before. Our ancestors have been here before. And yes, some have died, and others survived. And here we are also, surviving. And what is our task? To keep going? To cling to hope? To build confidence that we can handle what is happening and what is to come. Now, to further illustrate this modern dilemma, I'm going to take us back to ancient times again. I'm so sorry for those who might not be into history, but you've got a history buff here. And to the play from ancient Greece by Sophocles called Antigone. And I do have some personal resonance with this because I was in Antigone as the high school play. It was a fabulous performance. Then I retired. That was 30 years ago. But you can still find my star. No, I'm kidding. Okay. So the story of Antigone goes that there is a civil war in the city of Thebes. And two brothers of Antigone, Eteocles and Polynices, are fighting for control. And they both kill each other in single combat. And Antigone's uncle Creon becomes the king of Thebes. And he decrees that Antigone's brother Polynices is an enemy of the state. Eteocles is seen as the defender of the city. He is raised. And Polynices is left, his corpse is left to rot in the sun for the carrion to come and eat. And Antigone cannot accept this. She cannot accept the indignity, the atrocity. And so she sneaks in the middle of the night to go bury her brother. And in the morning, Creon discovers the truth here and reburies the brother. Antigone sneaks back the second night. And on the second night, she is caught and brought before the king. And Antigone does not relent. Creon follows the law of the state. Antigone follows the law of conscience. She sees there is a higher calling, a higher duty. And as a result of this, she is walled away alive. This is the kind of uplifting story that gets me invited to a lot of dinner parties. Now, why am I telling you this? Okay, so Greek tragedy was always intended to be cautionary tales. Watch out, this could be you. And the story of Antigone is one of, okay, if you have a higher calling, and you sense that higher calling, and we all do, what is it that we must lose? What is it that we must sacrifice? You want an interesting job? Well, go back to school, sacrifice. You want to buy a house? Save your pennies, sacrifice. You know, you want stability, whatever, in your marriage or something. Okay, sacrifice affairs. So there's always sort of sacrifice, and if it doesn't hurt, it doesn't count. And so in this, we have to think, okay, what is perhaps my higher calling for myself right now? And what is it that we have to lose? And often we have to lose comfort, security, certainty. Now, when the outer world shakes, we have to go into the inner world, and that's where psychologists sort of like to hang out. If you're really troubled in life, you become a psychologist. And I'm going to approach this through this metaphor that I heard through a colleague of mine, James Hollis, who's a psychologist in the States. So he talks about the horizontal and the vertical dimensions of life. All right? The horizontal state is sort of our preferred state. So you can think of it as kind of lying down, right? So it's like the everyday. It's like autopilot. It's kind of like passivity. I had it this morning. I woke up. It was nice and warm and cozy under the bed sheets. And I had to come downtown and give a public speech. And I really would rather kind of be at home with my coffee. Anybody identify with this, perhaps? Oh, yes, but we're all here. Great, okay. So we overcame here this inclination to kind of almost want to sink into the horizontal. Because there, of course, is something sort of so kind of satisfying about kind of sliding through life. Go with the flow. Match your socks, try a new breakfast cereal, find the new show on Netflix, wash, rinse, repeat. And yet, the more that the psyche is in the horizontal dimension, it pathologizes. We get anxious, we get depressed, we get demoralized. And we only enter the vertical realm through suffering. This is all the good news. In the vertical realm, this is the realm of meaning. This is the realm of, okay, what matters most? The higher calling, you could call it. But we don't like to enter this. We'd much rather kind of sink. And a lot of contemporary culture, right, is based on distraction, right, pacifying us. And so, I'll go back. I'll go back on my phone and start scrolling. They once said that the internal combustion engine will go down as one of the greatest scourges of humanity. I'm not sure where the iPhone's going to be in this list. I think it might make the top 10. So one of the doorways to this vertical dimension, which can be a realm of a lot of anxiety, and McGill was talking about this in terms of this need to, okay, how do we focus on our fears? And that's why I liked so much the title and the theme of this conference in terms of taking our power back. Because fear here, it's a pretty big, important phenomenon. In finance, they say follow the money. In psychology, we say follow the anxiety. So, how do we take back our power? How do we face our fears? So again, I brought another friend with me. His name is Carl Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist, founder of analytical psychology. And he once wrote, and I'm going to probably repeat this if it's okay, the spirit of evil is the negation of the life force by fear. Only boldness can deliver us, and if the risk is not taken, the meaning of life is violated. Can I say that again? The spirit of evil is the negation of the life force by fear. Only boldness can deliver us, and if the risk is not taken, the meaning of life is violated. Okay, so what is Jung saying to us here? So our fear, our first instinct, and by the way, I'm not above any of this. I'm a human being before I'm a psychologist. But fear somehow is the enemy. And yet it's our first instinct. And there's this sort of need for boldness as well. I remember watching, I was a bit of a Star Trek fan, still am a little bit. And there was this very interesting episode where one of the captains, because of course there's all these heroes, right? And you kind of look up to them, especially when you're a little kid like me. And the line was, "Fortune favors the bold." I went, oh, that sounds kind of neat. Years later, I was looking it up, and it's actually the motto of my family clan, Clan MacKinnon. Now, by the way, we stole it because a lot of people have, so we're not the originators. But I found that such a moment of what we call synchronicity, like kind of came back to me like, oh yes, fortune favors the bold. So this idea of being bold, how do we take this on? So psychology is usually about two things. It's about listening, most importantly. And secondly, it's about asking questions that open up things, that expand horizons. So I'm going to give you 3 questions here. And again, if you find them interesting, you may reflect on them later. One is, what is fear making me do in my life? The second is, what is fear keeping me from doing? And the third is, where in my life am I not showing up? Now, if you can answer those questions, what you've done is you've defined your to-do list. That's it. That's your personal agenda. So I'm going to bring up, why is this so difficult? Because, if this was easy, right, everybody'd be doing it, like Johnny Cash used to say. So we're going to talk a little about resistance here. And I'm going to bring up the work here of Franz Kafka. And this is where we get the term Kafkaesque, okay? Kafka was a Bohemian novelist. A little bit on his biography here. He burned an estimated 90% of his work due to persistent struggles with self-doubt. Much of the remaining 10% is lost, otherwise unpublished. When he was dying, he left strict instructions to his executor to destroy everything. And the executor said, I'm not going to do that. This also, by the way, being the story of the poet Emily Dickinson. So in one of his passages here, and he's got some really quite extraordinary work. They're not easy to read, Kafka, but they are quite interesting. He writes, "You can hold yourself back from the sufferings of the world. That is something you are free to do, and it accords with your nature. But perhaps this very holding back is the one suffering you could avoid." One more time. You can hold yourself back from the suffering of the world. That is something you're free to do, and it accords with your nature. But perhaps this very holding back is the one suffering you could avoid. Now that statement features prominently in 12-step programs, AA, GA, NA. I'm a great admirer of those programs. And what it is saying essentially is that our first instinct is passivity. Our first instinct is, failure of nerve. And here's the task for all of us. The task is not to go to war with that first instinct. Our task is to meet that instinct with compassion. We don't really have a choice on the fear, it's coming, right? We don't choose our feelings choose us. But how do we meet them with compassion? Often we meet them with shame. Oh my God, I'm such a failure, such a loser. I should be stronger and better or something. And then the second instinct shows up, and this is what moves us out of the passive into the active. Okay, 2 more anecdotes, and then we're going to release you for coffee and treats. I don't like to stand between people and a snack. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about Viktor Frankl now, the Austrian Jewish psychiatrist who founded a form of psychotherapy following his experiences in World War II. In 1942, just 9 months after his first marriage, Frankl and his family were sent to a concentration camp. There, his father starved to death. In 1944, Frankl and the surviving member of his families were transported to Auschwitz, where his mother and his brothers were murdered. His wife died later of typhus, and it is in this experience that he laid the foundations for his meaning-focused therapy. And I have a quote here from one of his books. "Everything can be taken, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given circumstance." There was a German quote I once read, "Don't grumble too much with the task that is given to you." What is Frankl saying here? And he called this the attitudinal response. So remember, I might feel fear, I can't really control that. However, I feel shame or anger. It's the second response that matters. How do I meet that? And how do I sort of respond to it constructively? And again, I want to say here, it's a tall order. It's a tall order. It sometimes really demands a lot from us. It demands for us to kind of grow in the inner world, expand, higher calling stuff. And then I'm going to end here with, actually I've got two more things to do, but I'm going to start, second to last here is I'm going to come up with one of the more challenging notions of this talk, and of course a lot of people storm out of the room when I bring up this. So we're going to lock the doors now so you can't go. We're going to bring up Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher. He resigned at 34 years old from his university job because of health problems. He wrote extensively for the next 10 years until he suffered a series of strokes and a mental collapse and paralysis, and dies quite young at age 55. And as a means to cope with his afflictions, he wrote about this concept, and he called it the amor fati. In Latin, it's loving your fate. And I have a quote here from one of his passages that I might just read twice. "I want to learn more and more to see as beautiful what is necessary in things." I want to learn more and more to see as beautiful what is necessary in things. Then I shall be one of those people who makes things beautiful. Amor fati, let that be my love henceforth, like my motto. I do not want to wage war against what is ugly. I do not want to accuse. I do not even want to accuse those who accuse. Looking away shall be my only negation, and all in all and on the whole, someday I wish to only be a yes-sayer. Okay, so what's he saying here? Nietzsche is coming at this in a really radical way. He's like, okay, can we accept, for better or for worse, whatever, my experiences of my early life, my parents, my culture, my religion, my traumas, my rejections, my humiliations, my neglect, the betrayal? Is it necessary? Is it more costly not to? So he's really talking about this notion of radical acceptance. But what are most of us told? Here's your body, now be ashamed of it forever. That's what most of us are told, right? And the task is, okay, hold on a minute, like, how do I bestow love on the unlovable parts of myself? There. That was easy. No, not that easy. Okay, and all this brings me to our final gentler teacher, who perhaps some of you know and have met before, and it's Kermit the Frog. It's not easy being green. There it is. You want to sing it? I'm not going to sing it today. Sorry, sir. They're not paying me that much. It's not easy being green. Having to spend each day the color of the leaves, when I think it could be nicer being red or gold or yellow or something much more colorful like that. It's not easy being green. It seems you blend in with so many other ordinary things, and people tend to pass you over because you're not standing out like flashy sparkles in the water or stars in the sky. But green's the color of spring, and green can be cool and friendly-like. And green can be big like an ocean, or important like a mountain, or tall like a tree. When green is all there is to be, it could make you wonder why, but why wonder? Why wonder? It's green and I'll do fine. It's beautiful and I think it's what I want to be. So thank you for your considered attention, and certainly we'll take your questions or objections. So everything is welcome, grievances, and now is the time. Anything coming up, and I'm happy to try to address that.
Okay.
So we're looking for stunned silence.
Okay, we'll take them here in the room. This lady right here, Claire, you had your hand up.
I liked your idea about the necessary can be beautiful, because I was a bit taken aback by everyone wanting to go on a cruise. So, and I feel that there are a lot of things beautiful in life if you just have the time to take a look at them. So, do you have some advice for how people can find more treasures in their lives, even if a reduced situation?
My first thought comes, I was thinking about, is it the outer cruise or the inner cruise?
Both.
You know, and this feels like one of these, what Carl Jung would call a tension of opposites. It's like, I can't afford to go on a literal cruise, but what's an inner cruise look like? And so when Jung would say you have a tension of opposites, sometimes there's this kind of like waiting process until a third option would present itself. It's like, do I stay in the marriage or do I leave? Like, I can't imagine leaving, but I can't imagine staying. And so what do I do? And I think that this is, where the creative instinct, the creative spark originates. Depth psychology talks a lot about the importance of sort of this recreation of ourselves. Like if we think of retirement, retirement is both an opportunity and a crisis, right? It's this sort of, having to go and rediscover who one is beyond, say, one's job titles or something like this. And I really do think that the recovery of stuff that we have lost along the journey of trying to grow up, and do kind of adult things, oh, no, that, painting, that's not something that, adults are supposed to do or whatever. And I think for myself, and this really came out of my experience of COVID, because COVID, not to make this all about me, my favorite subject, was a tough ride. I mean, it was very hard to find psychologists who wanted to rent physical space, so our clinic was absolutely kind of on the rocks. We were kind of months away from having to close, much like the Argyll Institute, which is just over yonder there. And at the time, I remember consulting a psychologist myself in Toronto, and what came out of that experience for me, which was fascinating, and then I want to take the question, was I rediscovered my interest in writing. And not academic writing, which I had been doing and probably doing quite miserably, but creative writing. And lo and behold, a moment of synchronicity came up. My parents were sort of downsizing and cleaning up their house, and they found this short story, this choose your own adventure story I'd written in grade 6. A Star Trek story, yes. You know, choose your own adventure, illustrated, by the way, limited edition. And I thought, that's fascinating to me. I'd completely forgotten about that. And so that's where I would go, Claire. It's like this kind of, okay, what is it that I lost along the journey that fired my dreams? You know, and what I ended up discovering after having failed probably about 10 times to write an academic book, I ended up writing a fiction book, which is fascinating to me. Yeah, I didn't think that was the book I was supposed to be writing. All right, so enough about me. Yeah, please, MacKinnon.
Question for you, Chris. Thank you so much for this great presentation. When we're horizontal, we hold everything in us, right? But where that meeting point, where the vertical is, even though the courage is here, the fear is here, everything is on that same line when I'm flat, what is it that pivots us and trajects us forward?
I've got good news and bad news, and they're both the same. I think it's some kind of event sometimes that chooses us, you know, and it can be, sometimes it'll be in the form of loss or something. We all have these moments that sort of pluck us out of our everyday. Usually they're not always great ones. I can think of a big turning point in my life was the time I got fired. You know, and that was certainly a moment of crisis and sadness. And yet also this opportunity of like deep kind of like soul searching of like, hey, so how, like, I'm not entirely innocent here too. Like I had some role to play in this. And it's often in those moments where we learn the most, you know. And it clarified also something for me, which was, you know, as much as I was trying to do that job and fit in, that wasn't really me. You know, so it's these ways that we can kind of alienate ourselves if we stay in the horizontal. And it's the discovery of a kind of what we'd say a kind of truer self in psychology. And by that, the most reliable way in this is like, hey, what gives you energy? Like when you start something and then you finish it and you have more energy than when you started, trust that. Trust that. You're in alignment there with yourself. You're in good, right relationship with you. Now, who's this old codger? Oh, that's me. Okay. How can one consolidate a good mind and healthy attitude with a compromised physical attributes? My mind says go and my body says no. How to find balance? Thank you. Okay. So I'm not going to probably be able to do this question totally justice in this moment. I'll think of it on the way home, and all my good ideas come then. That to me feels like there's a few parts to it. One is there's the acknowledgement of a grief that, you know, whatever, things aren't quite what they were somehow. You know, I'm not 20 anymore. I'm not 30 anymore. You know, I look a lot younger than I am, I know. But so there's definitely sort of the effects that sort of come upon us as we age. And I think that there's something there in the acknowledgement of that. And there's something kind of healing in this too. Again, sort of for better, for worse, this is who I am now. And there's sort of this recognition of loss, but as we see here, where the psychology would say, rightly or wrongly, that where the real agency, where we really do have the power, is here. You know, it's sort of how it is that we are going to be, let's say, bigger than the wound, bigger than the injury. You know, it's like if somebody really hurts us, and we go into the harrowing business of forgiveness, right? Trying that, it's almost like saying, I have to somehow be bigger than the wound here. And life hurts us. Life hurts us a lot. So whatever the physical piece that's being mentioned there, I don't want to at all sound unsympathetic or even Pollyanna here. Sometimes some of the things that can can be truly horrifying. But I think there's also sort of some wisdom there in what the ancient Greeks would say. What's the beginning of wisdom? They would say humbleness. Acceptance and humility. The Greeks would say, by the way, all those things that you're really sure of, maybe not. That's the beginning of wisdom. And so it's almost like this becomes the task of life as these things are visited upon us, and how do we, choose the path of enlargement. The psyche's first choice is always the path of anxiety management, narrowing it down. And so our task is always the path of okay, what's the bigger story for me here? But sometimes it's like, I'm not thinking very much about my right knee now, but I tell you, if I couldn't use it, boy, I'd be thinking about it a lot. And it would be, there's the grief there, and there's an honesty if say that mechanism was never working again. But I'd hope, and I'm not saying I'd do this, but I'd hope that I could somehow also live with it and not let it dominate me. I'd aspire to that. I don't know if I would do it. As I said to my colleagues in palliative care, I said, I really hope when it's my time, I'm not a jerk, but I can't promise it. But I'll try my best. Any other questions, comments? One more here.
It's just a quote that came to my mind while you were talking. I think it's Albert Camus.
Okay.
Did I say it wrong? No. Okay. In the midst of winter, I found within me an invincible summer.
Oh,
so
wonderful.
that's like the resilience that I think you're talking about, and the finding it within. That's just what was in my mind.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Yeah, we have to find role models, eh? We have to find people we can look up to, especially these days, because sometimes, the leaders are doing something, up to something. And so who do we turn to that's going to sort of, again, reassure us, comfort us, give us hope? So I think we solved all the problems, of the world here. Thank you all very much. Appreciate that. Have a good rest of your conference.
I think it just shows us we have to get out of our comfort zone, and I think every situation and life experience is a learning experience. I think we're here to learn. We're constantly learning. It's not easy, but we have to keep our spunk and our interests and our involvement, and be knowledge-based and do the best we can, one foot in front of the other. Christopher, thank you very much. That was most informative and very deep. And
I love that line you said there. I would make that your motto. Like put it above your door every day. Be spunky. Spunk.
Yeah.
We need mottos, right?
Yeah, we do. We do. Exercise our rights. Really, don't give up.